Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you making some time to spend 45 minutes with us as we dive into Eloqua Forms. My name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today, and I'm also joined by Adrian Jones, our CEO and founder. I've actually given Adrian a task to present something today, so you'll hear from him a little later on. He's also managing our Q&A as well. So if you do have questions throughout, please make sure you use the Q&A or the chat if you'd rather ask a specific question a bit more privately. And also you can use the emoticons within Zoom to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, perhaps, or just to let us know that we're heading in the right direction. And of course, all of our sessions are recorded on Zoom webinars. Okay, so what's the plan for the next 45 minutes? So first of all, we do have one question that's been submitted, so we'll get into that. We'll also look at capturing the opt-in. So it's kind of the form 101, really, right? We have to get that opt-in to give us permission to market to people. So we'll explore that and have a look at that in a bit more detail. Then, as promised, we want to move beyond the basics. That's really what today is all about, is trying to push the boundaries a little bit in your thinking about how you can use your Eloqua Forms. Then we want to look at how you make those forms look fantastic. And we're going to look at a little bit around CSS and styling and how that can be quite easily implemented within your Eloqua landing pages so that your Eloqua landing page and form experience can really seamlessly blend in with what's happening on your website. So they look like they belong together and they're not disjointed from a visual point of view. Last month, we also indicated that we wanted to put a new segment into the webinar, which is going to be fun because we're always running so tight on time. But we'll drop a new segment in called the Eloqua AI Advantage, where what we want to do is take a very quick look at a specific component of the Eloqua AI pieces and just give you some ideas and practical applications for how you can use some of those. And then just a quick revisit of any of the 25C release updates. So that's live at the moment for everybody. So we'll jump into that. All right. So the first question comes from Jim. So Jim, it looks like Jim's on the line today. So thanks for joining us, Jim. Jim's a marketing automation coordinator here in Australia. So his question was, when a contact supplies their details through an Eloqua form, I'd like to trigger an SMS to them to review their details if the email supplied hard bounces. How can I do this? The answer is yes, you can do it. That's the quick answer. How do you do it, though, is probably the next question. So let's have a look at some answers as to what might help with that. All right. So assuming you have a mobile phone number, that's obviously the first thing, right? So we assume in the example that Jim's provided that there's every chance that in the form in question that you're looking at, that there's a mobile phone being asked for at the same time. So how do you do it? Step one, you want to first of all identify the audience. And so the best way to do that is to create a segment that identifies any new contacts created within the last hour, for example, okay? Then you would start to use filters to exclude contacts without a phone number because we need the phone number in order to contact them. Then using that same segment, you would be able to use additional filters to understand who's hard bounced. And we can move that onto a campaign canvas where we can then look at sending out a communication that would drive them to a brand new form where they can update their email address. Okay, so it'd be an SMS that's outbound from the campaign canvas. And in there, you would have a URL, probably a shortened URL would be ideal. And then they can click on that from their smartphone, access the form. And because it's all happening on the mobile, you want to make sure it's not long. You just want to make it as quick as possible. Essentially, what you're looking for is an update to the email address. Now, there are some other considerations around there because you have got a contact created in Eloqua that has a hard bounce. So we want to try and preferably update that email. So there are some form functionalities that will help you in that process, but there are some considerations to think about how you do that. What you don't want to do is just simply create a brand new contact. You want to go back to the contact that had the hard bounce and actually update the email address. So again, the form can manage that for you, and there's some processing steps they can help you through that process. So, Jim, I understand you had a bit of a chat with Thomas on that one, and Thomas is sort of giving you a hand in order to make that happen. But a great question. It's a common situation for many of us. People put in slightly wrong details, just make a typo when they're filling in the form, etc. So that's a great idea. A great idea. So hopefully that gives some inspiration to others that might be on the line with us today. So thanks again, Jim, for that. All right, so let's start at the beginning and capturing the opt-in. This really is kind of Form 101. At the end of the day, most of us are involved in permission-based marketing, and we have to obtain that permission from somebody in order to communicate with them. And so, as I said here, it really is probably the most critical part of the relationship that you have with a person is actually gaining that opt-in. The other thing that we need to consider is not just capturing the opt-in, but also recording the opt-in. And as I was thinking through this whole process, I couldn't help but think of Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And habit number 2, if you've ever read his book, is begin with the end in mind. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to be able to think down the track as to all these great campaigns that we can deliver to people and what our objectives are. But we need to start with the opt-in. We have to get that opt-in right. And so let's have a look at how we might do that. All right, so largely Eloqua manages this for you. So as a system, when a brand new contact is created in Eloqua, that contact is immediately globally subscribed, okay? The term opt-in is not used in Eloqua. So when you look at reports and so on and so forth, you won't find the words opt-in. What you'll find is globally subscribed. So whenever you talk opt-in, Eloqua speak for that is globally subscribed. And it's the highest level. A person is either globally subscribed or they're globally unsubscribed. Now, as you'll be aware, when you fill in forms, the general best practice approach is to provide a checkbox. Not a checkbox that is pre-populated, but a checkbox that requires the person to select in order to be able to submit the form. Okay. Now, the language that you put, I literally just was on a call with some clients this morning based out of Asia, and this wasn't sitting on their primary inquiry form, which sits on the website and doesn't even come into Eloqua. That's a whole other discussion that we're trying to work through to help them with that at the moment. But that's something that they need to figure out as a team. Do they want to make sure that lead inquiry form is also capturing an opt-in specifically for a marketing exercise? And you can see here at Marketing Cube, the language, that's exactly what you see when you fill in our forms. Now, sitting behind the globally subscribed construct are all of your email groups. And these will be different for everybody. You can call these email groups whatever you want. I've just sort of thrown some examples here on the page as to what we might call them. And so they are assigned to each email asset when you create them, but they do give people the ability to pick and choose what they actually want to hear about from you. And so you may translate these to people giving you their preferences or their interests, etc. You can be very granular or you can be very high level, depending on what you want to do here. So you can see through this example, we've broken webinars and events as 2 different subscriptions. And, COVID probably was the big the big change there in relation to that. I think before COVID, it was just events, and events happened either in person or they attended their webinars. But yeah, things changed with COVID from that point of view. Now, by default, when someone opts in, you can email them anything from any of those email groups. They don't have to specifically be subscribed to those email groups in order for you to communicate with them. You can definitely send anybody an email from any email group unless they've actually unsubscribed at the email group level. All right. So what does that look like? So if we take some of these away, and by taking them away, we assume this means that somebody has actually unsubscribed from them. In this scenario, the only 2 left that we can actually communicate to people on is events and what's new. That's it. Okay. They've actually unsubscribed from the others. Now, at some point, should they decide to opt out completely, that is to globally unsubscribe, then things change dramatically. It doesn't matter which email groups they're subscribed to. that's completely irrelevant because the global unsubscribe overrules everything else. Okay, so once they opt out or globally unsubscribe, it doesn't matter if they're actually subscribed to all of your email groups. That becomes irrelevant because the global unsubscribe rules the world. Okay, so that's the fundamentals. Now, it was interesting this week. Like, I literally, well, I, like you, I get 1,000 emails in my inbox inviting me to attend a whole range of webinars. So I just clicked through on two. And if you attend any of these organizations regularly, you probably know exactly who these forms are. But I'll leave you to figure that out. It's irrelevant to a degree. Interestingly, both of these forms contain the exact same number of fields. I'd argue the one visually on the right-hand side looks like there are less fields, but there aren't. Okay. Nice little trick and play of using sort of a two-column approach here, which you can do in Eloqua, by the way. That's nice and easy to do. No coding required, so that's pretty simple. The key thing I wanted to point out to you here was, though, that this is what I saw from my email. I clicked on register and I got to this page, and this is what I saw. Nothing pre-populating. So I have to start from scratch. Now, both of these organizations, I have attended their webinars many times. Good webinars, great content, but I have to fill in the form every single time. Okay. I'd argue that that's not the best experience, that there are better ways to do it. And hopefully this is the experience. Now, of course, I'm a tad biased, but hopefully this is the experience you're having when you register for the Eloqua user group. That it should essentially populate like this. Now, as we move through today, there are a few things I want to share with you around the user group, largely because you experience it every month. Although I notice we do have a few new people joining us today, so thank you for making some time if it's your first time joining us today. We want to give people as little reason as possible to not fill in the form, right? They just need to get here. Yep, that's all correct. Great, hit submit, and they're done. Now, you'll notice that the checkbox here is actually pre-populated. Now, that's an Eloqua function that you can do. And we actually make it really clear in the language. We say, if this box is already ticked, you've previously opted in. So I try to use their language. That the term opted in, I think, is a little bit more widely understood potentially than subscribed. Maybe that's a bit of a digital marketing term, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm open to input on that one. This is, I think, a much nicer experience. Now, there are all sorts of experiences we can deliver with forms, and that's what we're here to talk about today. But I just wanted to give that to you as a visual. But I also want to make sure we spend some time in Eloqua today looking at how we deliver what we just looked at. So let's do exactly that. All right. So in Eloqua, off to our forms area. And what I'm going to do is actually focus on the form that you use to register to be with us today. So that would be 2025-093. And this month, just for fun, we actually decided to create a registration page on our CMS, which is WordPress, and also on Eloqua. So when the invitation went out, we split the list of invitees in half using the campaign canvas to do that. And 50% of people were sent to WordPress to register, and the other 50% was sent to the Eloqua landing page. Now, the folks that went to the Eloqua landing page obviously got a full experience in relation to pre-population, versus those that went to the website had to manually type things in. Not an ideal experience. Some people did it, but I have to tell you, from a 50% point of view, the Eloqua landing page won hands down, and I've got some stats here to show you. So the conversion from that point of view using Eloqua was far greater than it was with WordPress. So hopefully I didn't disappoint those people, and hopefully they will come back next month if that was the reason they decided not to register. But let's look at the actual Eloqua form. So that's this one right here. Okay, so once we're in here, the key thing I want to show you is the opt-in part. And I'm just going to zoom in a bit there so you can see. So that's what you see. That's what I see, and you would see as the Eloqua user in the back end. Okay, it's just simply a checkbox, etc. And over on the far left-hand side, you've got a range of options. And you'll see that the key one that we've selected from a pre-population point of view is to use the global subscription status. Notice you've also got available email group. If you select email group, you then obviously select the relevant email group for it to work. But this is the one that we use in this context in relation to that particular field. And so that's how that form is able to pre-populate. Now, that all works beautifully, largely because it's an Eloqua form on an Eloqua landing page. It does get more complex, and it can be done on a CMS, but it does get more complex. And you then have to weigh up what really are the advantages of all that added complexity just to have it on the CMS when you can do it so easily on an Eloqua landing page. And potentially another discussion for another time. Now, within the Australian market, generally speaking, it's not appropriate, and I don't want to say it's against the law because that's going maybe a bit too far, but I believe pre-populating the opt-in box is not something that you want to do if you have no record of the person having done it previously. Okay. Now, we work with a client in Europe, in Germany. Well, they're a global brand, but the team are based in Germany. And under the GDPR legislation, this becomes quite a bit more complex again in relation to what's happening. You certainly don't want to be able to, certainly don't want to pre-populate that opt-in checkbox if the person has never opted in previously. Okay. Now, you'll notice here that it just simply says, I agree to opt into communications. That's it. However, when we look at the actual landing page, and I'm going to go to dependencies to locate that. Here it is. You'll notice there was a bit more text, right? There was more copy below that box, which you're not seeing in the form. So how do we do that? That literally is a little bit of HTML and JavaScript magic happening in the background that's been hardwired into the templates, okay? So if I look at this live online and click on register today, there you go. There it is right there. So there's that same language. So we put that same language into our CMS to have that WordPress experience, but 99% of the time, this is what we do here. That's using a little bit of, as I said, JavaScript and magic to produce that. Now, for me as the user who can hardly spell HTML, obviously I have a team of geniuses who help me with all this sort of stuff, but it's something that I don't have to touch. It's all got to do with code that's been produced, etc., and it just simply works for me every time. So as long as I'm accessing the landing page from my templates where all of this information is hardwired into, I'm set. I don't have to worry about anything. It's all done and it's the same month in, month out. Okay. The final step, back to the form there, sorry, is in the processing step. And in the processing step area, you will see we have this one right here, which is to subscribe the contacts globally. And I've just put in their standard opt-in. The only condition that it places on is if the person has selected on. So as long as that box is ticked, because remember, for some people, they will get to that page, they've never done this before, therefore the box won't be ticked and they need to check it. However, for many of you, if I look at who's on the line today, for many of you, that will be pre-ticked. And so that's fine. We just, again, simply go through the process of globally subscribing you to that process. Now, there are other things going on because we talked about recording the opt-in, making sure that we've got evidence recorded elsewhere. And we do that through a custom object. And so we send that information off to a custom object, which records it. Now, some organizations will record that every single time. We don't believe that's necessary for us in our parameters and what we're doing. So we have it recorded once and that's it. It's there. And so we have the original time that the person opted in or globally subscribed to our communications. Okay, so the next step is we want to look at moving beyond the basic, looking at some non-standard form use cases. Now, I mentioned earlier that Adrian's going to jump in here and give us a bit of a hand. So Adrian, I'm going to hand over to you as we look at explaining some concepts around different types of forms and capabilities.
Thanks, Derek, for the opportunity to jump in on your party. I just wanted to, I guess, elaborate a little bit on when is a form not just a form. And I was thinking about a framework for forms in a way that sort of gives us a way of categorizing different types of forms. And it's sort of built around the purpose for the form and a little bit on the experience of people using the form. In this framework, I guess it starts with a basic form. It's like an introduction. Usually it's an exchange for something, and it's also typically fairly static data. It's normally personal, account, profile type information, preferences, maybe those sorts of things. But we're basically gathering basic data, just a simple form. We could expand it with some progressive profiling. If we know something, why do we keep asking the same thing? And typically you've got, I don't know, let's say 7 fields on a form, ideally. So if you want to know 10 pieces of information, it's a good idea to kind of rotate the last 2 questions and use that space to ask some additional questions. So that's kind of basic data collection. What happens if we go up that value chain a little bit? And so the next category of forms I was thinking about were forms that are sort of higher value. I should say higher value to us, but strategically we're trying to get certain pieces of information. It might be to qualify a lead or understand where somebody is in their customer journey, or understand a little bit more deeply the sorts of things they're looking for, so that we can help them. And the value in that process, it might be that they value the process itself, or it may be that it's incentivized in some way, but it's typically data that changes. So, or it's used pretty immediately. So good examples would be sort of surveys or polls, which kind of help us understand how we're doing, or how people feel about certain things. That can extend to CSAT or NPS. And maybe we take the results from an NPS and use those to either directly provide feedback or shoot it through to maybe customer service, or let people know that something's happening that needs to be addressed. Or good news, where we can drive things, I don't know, like a case study or something, or a reference, or maybe a review type process. So we can use that data in good ways. And then that calculator is quite a good exchange as well, because you can say, well, here's a calculator. It could be the amount that you might want to apply for a mortgage, or a calculator that tells you, I don't know, how long certain things are going to last, or whatever it might be. But that information could be valuable to the person that's set the calculator up as well. So maybe that could tell you something. And yeah, so good examples of that. There might be little wizards that collect information, those sorts of things. And as you step through them, you're kind of gathering some information that you can use. So it could be higher value to us. And so those forms are a little bit smarter. And some of the cleverer ways that we're seeing is people really trying to identify buyer stages, and then also trying to identify their persona. So not everybody buys the same way. Not everybody at every stage kind of is looking for the same sorts of things. So, a smarter way of communicating with people is to try to establish that in advance, and then put them in the right journeys with the information that they need to support their decision-making processes. So that kind of makes sense. And then I've thought about another level of form, and I've called it interactive. And that's where we kind of use what we already know, or what we get told in the form filling process, to update the experience. So this kind of starts with what irks me the most. And that is when you get to an order form or an application form, and it's kind of right at the end of your kind of discovery process. And you have to start all over again with filling in all the details that you've already provided many times. Now, I kind of understand some of the technical reasons for why that happens. Often it's a different system, maybe a different platform, a different process. As a customer, you kind of go, well, you know all this. And I'm kind of telling you it again. Sometimes you have to say the same information multiple times within the same application form. So it's kind of like just using that. And that's just the not smart way of doing it. I suppose if you're looking at smart ways of doing it, then you're really using advanced progressive profiling. You're getting to a point where you can use sort of almost single click. So Nirvana would be like single click event registration, or Amazon book orders, or a one-click application process. Those sorts of things where you're really leveraging what you've already done. But also, I think smart branching or validation, so that we don't have to ask more questions than we need to. We already know, we can confirm that somebody is who they say they are. We can move on. That gives us that kind of about 3 levels, really. Sort of really basic data, some much higher value stuff in the middle, and then moving to kind of interactive data collection. So hopefully that's a framework that helps. Back to you, Derek.
Great. Thanks, Adrian. Look, I think that's really helpful insight, and to part of our objective today is to kind of push people's thinking a little bit in relation to what their forms are for. And if you're spending most of your time kind of in that level 1 scenario with your Eloqua Forms, were you even aware that Eloqua could help you with level 2 and level 3, for example? Hopefully that's the case. All right, well, let's come back to another way forms can give you some really cool information. And this one is in relation to the form that you all submitted, except for the 2% of registrants who filled in the CMS. I haven't, no, actually, I did. Sorry, I did. I rolled that data in as well. So this is a breakdown of everybody that registered for this month's webinar. And you can see the different sources, right? So let me explain to you what you're looking at, starting in the sort of top right-hand side there with the August attendee and the August no-show. So what we have there is people who registered for August, and that's broken down to those who attended and those who were no-shows. So those people received information or emails following those events saying, thank you for attending and sorry we missed you. And in both of those communications, there was a link for them to register for this month as well. And so you can see that we have 6, 7, 8% of people who registered for this month did so off the back of the post-event communications from last month. Okay. Now, the next one is new subscribers. So this is a group of people who have been sent a specific invitation because they have proactively subscribed to the user group following last month. So they've done it with sort of within the last 30 days, so to speak, roughly. So they're new subscribers. Then we have non-subscribers. This is a group that we don't always reach out to. So these are people who are opted in to hear from Marketing Cube. We know they use Eloqua. So these are people who had previously told us they use Eloqua, but are not actually subscribed to the Eloqua user group. So what we do is about every 3 or 4 months, we kind of cycle through where we kind of reach out to that group and just invite them. Hey, this is what you've been missing out on. We'd love you to come and join us, that sort of stuff. And so 6% of people who registered for the user group this month were non-subscribers. Now they are subscribed through the Eloqua user group. Then there's various invitations that go out. We can see there was a first invitation and second invitation that went to the CMS. You can see the CMS in brackets there. So that means I sent those people off to the WordPress website to register versus the Eloqua landing page. But the big one is the Eloqua group. So this is the group that we sent to the Eloqua landing page to register, which is how they've done it for many years. That's how you register for the user group pretty much every month. When we talk about a third invitation, that invitation, which you can see again is 6%, that group of people have been sent one invitation. They opened it, but they did not register. And so that third invitation is not that no one gets 3. This is all about me and me understanding what's going on. There's 1, 2, 3 email assets. And so people that get the number 3 email have opened the first one, but not registered for the webinar. So we do a second invitation to that group to help them see if they'd like to come along and join us. And you can see clearly that worked for 6% of people. Now, all of that information comes from the form, and there's a configuration that you can set up within Eloqua, and there's a few ways you can do it. The way I choose to do it is that we take the name of the email and we add it to a hidden field. This all happens automatically. I don't do it. It was done years ago. It just happens now every time we do a form submit within Marketing Cube. And that enables me to look and do some analysis and to really work out what's working the best, what's the most effective way to get people to this process. And because we can look at this every single month, I can pretty much tell you that what you're looking at is probably fairly typical month in, month out. It's pretty much the same. The only thing we did differently this month was that sending people off to WordPress to fill in a form there, which was integrated back to Eloqua. All right, so the next thing I want to suggest to you is try not to get stuck in a form rut. Okay, what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that is if you're in the habit of going to an old form and doing a save as, and just simply rinsing and repeating and doing the same thing, that's what I mean by a form rut, okay? There are so many glitches and issues that can happen with saving as a form. A much more robust way of doing it would be to use form templates, much faster, much more secure. We can keep them up to date, especially now that we have the template managers. It's much easier to keep your form templates up to date. So in order to get out of the rut and to try and do things a little bit differently, really think through who your target audience is. And, is this an opportunity to ask some different questions, not just the standard questions? If you're inviting people, if you're running a lot of events, and a lot of our clients run lots of events, these are great opportunities to enhance the profile data that you've got, utilizing things like progressive profiling that Adrian just mentioned there a moment ago. But the other thing is to don't ask questions just for the sake of asking questions. Make sure you talk to your sales organization or whoever it is that you're passing leads to, service, sales, whoever. And let's make sure the questions we're asking are relevant to the sales process in relation to what we're doing. Also, if people are registering for an event, do you give people a chance to maybe submit a question to the presenter? That could be something worth doing. That's an experience we delivered to you. We found that putting it in the form, now this is just for us in relation to our audience, which is you, we found that by putting it in the actual registration form, it would slow people down. They'd be like, oh, do I have a question? And it's like, well, if I don't put my question here, then I can't ask my question. So we moved that to the confirmation email. So we created a landing page to match with that and form. So when you get that confirmation email, and then when you get the first reminder email, there's another prompt in there inviting you to submit a question. And by the time you get the email reminder that you got 45 minutes before we started today, that's removed. That's purely because I just wouldn't have time to check them all and potentially get the answers together for the live webinar. But always happy to take Q&A. Now, the other one I would suggest to you is that not all fields have to be mandatory. A great example, client in real estate marketing. Obviously, real estate marketing in this country is fairly expensive. And so people often, when they're buying, will go to various different companies and provide their details, etc. And most of those organizations will ask for a mobile phone number. What our client was seeing, they get some good mobile phone numbers, as in they were real, but they'd also get a lot of 555, 123, 12345 sort of exercise, which was clearly useless. But but what they were doing there, they were making the mobile phone field required. They decided to play and have a bit of a go at trying something different. And so what they did is they made the mobile phone field no longer required. Now, this meant, of course, they had a big reduction in mobile phone numbers, but what they did find was when a mobile phone number was provided, it was a real phone number. That's interesting, right? Now, it also becomes probably a better buying signal that a person is willing to give over that information, knowing full well, if I'm giving my mobile phone number to a real estate company about a $1.4 million apartment in Sydney, then there's every chance they're going to call me. But it's not required, it was voluntary. And so, so try something a little bit different. Just keep doing the same is not going to really give you a different result. And that's my point here. Simply asking the same questions over and over doesn't really reveal a great deal for you about the people. But what can we ask? What sort of questions can we ask to help you reveal what you need to know about a person? And this is probably a conversation that you really need to have in the context of your sales team or the service team. We see this quite a bit in higher education with some really smart questions. There are those who will ask questions that are very profile oriented, like, what's your primary course of study? Very valid questions. When are you thinking to start studying, etc.? Do you have a campus preference? All very valid, good questions. Whereas some of the other universities are starting to look at asking more, maybe Adrian, you can help me here. I want to say experiential type of questions, or questions that give a little bit more insight into the personality or the persona of the student. So is it, I absolutely know what I want to study, or is it, I know I want to go to university, but I'm not quite sure what I want to study, or is it potentially, I'm not sure if I want to go to university. So they're kind of three very different personas in that particular scenario. And that gives you, as the marketer, a great opportunity to really tailor and personalize some communications. So just in the spirit of that concept and thinking about those types of questions, if you had to ask just three questions, and you could present those questions in a form, what would those questions be that are going to help you to potentially assign a persona to people? Once you've got that persona in place, you then have the ability to tailor your communications and hopefully be a little bit more on the ball and on the mark, I suppose, into what that person's actually interested in and why they're even talking to you and why they're even providing you with information. So have a think about that one. It's probably a good conversation to go back and kind of network and workshop with your colleagues. And please, as I said, try and include somebody from sales if you're having this conversation. But what could you ask? And I think those examples I gave maybe there from a prospective university student is a good example to kind of get you thinking. And sometimes it comes in the form of a statement. It's almost like which of these best describes you? And you might present people with a statement and they select which statement best identifies them. Okay. Now, double opt-ins is something that also comes up occasionally. We are finding with our European clients in the context of the GDPR legislation, which is their privacy legislation within the European Union, that the double opt-in is kind of critical. But what you don't want to do is an experience where every single time the person registers for a webinar or accesses some thought leadership and content, you don't want to have to go through that double opt-in process every single time. It should be recorded once. We know that it's been recorded. We know that the person has opted in. They've been through that double opt-in process, and we can record it as such. And so Eloqua is able to manage that quite easily for you. So if double opt-in is something that comes up, or you're potentially playing within the EU market, and this is something that you need to consider for your requirements and etc. Policy procedures, then yeah, please reach out. Let us know. We can help you through that process. I had an interesting experience this morning too, literally this morning, and I decided to drop this into today's presentation. Most of us are familiar with this concept of forward to a friend, and it was very popular many years ago, but many marketers stopped doing it because the underlying problem was that me, Derek, would receive, let's say, from the conversation, I'd receive their email, and I'm deciding, okay, I know Adrian would be really interested in this. So I click on forward to a friend. I reach a page like the one you can see on the screen right here. I pop in Adrian Jones. I pop in Adrian's email address, my details, blah, blah, blah. And I go ahead and submit it. Now, the problem is from the conversation's point of view that Adrian at no point has provided them with any opt-in. He's not agreed to their communications. He's not agreed to receiving anything and so on and so forth. So that's why when I saw it in the footer of the email today, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, what are they doing there? That's interesting. So you probably can't see it. That's this little gray text down the bottom here. I've just repeated it here on the left-hand side. So they're kind of making it quite clear that this is all we're going to do is take this email and we're going to forward it to your friend. That's really kind of it. Speaking with Adrian earlier, as he said, one of the main reasons or one of the contributing factors for many organizations was how do we now make sure that Adrian's email address in the context of the conversation and their marketing environment doesn't end up in a database where he gets picked up and then is now sent other communications which he never opted in for. And for some organizations, that just became too fraught with danger and was too perilous. And so they just leave it to people to forward emails themselves, which obviously we all know how to do. Look, I just thought that was really timely and topical in the conversation based on what, sorry, no play on the word there, conversation. So yeah, I'll just leave that with you. Obviously, there are people still doing it. I'm not sure if this is something you do or if you have questions about it. If you do, certainly reach out. We'd love to help out and give you a hand. All right, now the other really important part about forms are processing steps, because the processing steps is where largely the magic happens. Now, before I jump in, I want to do a very shameless plug. If you've got a phone, grab your phone, scan the QR code. We work with a lot of clients in helping them build out some pretty cool forms, doing some pretty cool things. And also helping build in some of those basics. So the way I explained to you how our forms work in relation to the user group and so on and so forth, they make a big difference to me as a marketer building those assets because they're done and I don't have to think about it again and again. And you can have that same experience as an Eloqua user, and our support team can definitely help you in that process. So please feel free to reach out. either scan the code or reach out to me or to Adrian directly. We'd love to hear from you. But let's have a quick look at those processing steps. So again, I wanted to show you, this is the Eloqua user group. This is a template, and these are the processing steps that occur every month when people register for the user group. Now, you may feel a bit daunted by the volume of those processing steps. I hope not. But essentially what's happening here is people arrive at the landing page to register for the event. And one of the key things that we ask them is which webinar would they like to attend, because we run the Asia Pac and the Americas one. Now, have you even noticed when you register each month that we actually pre-populate that for you? Now, we do that based on a few things. We do it based on your country and the region your country falls in. So the region is a marketing cube construct. And we've told Eloqua that all of these countries are within the Asia Pacific region. All of these countries are North America. These are Central America. All of these are European Union. All of these are Europe. These are Middle East, Africa, so on and so forth. And so using that, we've done some JavaScript magic that means when you click from the email to register for the user group, if you're in Australia, New Zealand, or Asia, the default for you will be the Asia Pacific webinar. You can change it, that's fine. But all I'm trying to do is to reduce the number of fields that you need to actually interact with. That hopefully when you reach that form, it's pretty much, yep, that's it, pretty much it. And then you can hit submit and you're done. Unless there's some progressive profiling in play there, which there is in this particular form, then that's the only real difference. Then there's all these hidden fields, and we use a lot of those hidden fields to send information off to a custom object. So we have a custom object for the Eloqua user group, and that's where we capture people's who's registered, which topic they've registered for, the date of that, etc. Did they attend? Were they a no-show? All that sort of stuff. And then we have some great dashboards within Insight that feed that information back to us in a far more visual way than just looking at a custom data object, which can be a bit boring. It's like looking at a big giant Excel spreadsheet, essentially. Just this morning, I sat with a client I mentioned in Asia, and we were looking at forms and looking at the conditional elements. And so a mistake I've seen some clients make with forms when they're running events, for example, let's say it's a national event, the financial services industry are pretty good at doing national road shows. So they'll do events in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, etc. What I've seen some of our clients do in the early days is they're like, well, I need a registration page for each of those cities. I need a form for each of those cities, and I need a confirmation email for each of those cities. The reality is you don't. You only need a single page with a single form. Let the form present people with the various options. And then you can use the conditional steps at the back end of the form. So if they said they're coming to Sydney, then you can send them a Sydney confirmation email. Now, if you utilize custom objects with this event construct, you could even use dynamic content and have one confirmation email. But you would need something in the custom object, or maybe on the contact, but most people would do it on a custom object to then drive the dynamic content. So we reduce the number of assets needed and can provide a far more highly tailored experience for people. So in processing steps, the other key things we do is we're able to control information that goes off to the CRM. In our world, that's off to the Salesforce platform. And one of the key reasons we don't use forms within the Salesforce CRM construct is the duplication errors. So the CRM doesn't have a construct that enables you to not create duplicates. And so we've had the same problem with clients. I think actually one of our clients in Germany, we identified this where they were going straight from a CRM form on their website into the CRM, and every time it was submitted, it would create brand new leads. But the problem is they weren't brand new leads. It was the same people submitting information and requests, etc. But the CRM is creating brand new leads every single time. So giving a really crazy view of lead generation, right? So shifting that into Eloqua, we can control that. It's unique. We can go into the CRM. Eloqua and Salesforce work beautifully together, and we can identify that they already exist, and therefore we update the lead versus creating a brand new lead. Lots of reasons to understand form processing steps and how they can help you with manage your data much more professionally, help avoid duplication, and also clean and scrub the data in a whole range of different ways as well. All right. We are running out of time, and I'm not moving as fast as I'd wanted to. So this is what I just explained to you about the website and your experience when you register, and whether or not you even noticed. So, we send you that email. You then arrive on our page, and there are a number of things that are done differently here, as I said. So when you click on register now, that will depend on where you're based as to which one you're shown. You can choose the other, but we default it for you. The time zone information that you see here, this is actually the default, so it shows you both episodes. But if we know you're in Australia or New Zealand or Singapore or Malaysia or India, then you'll just see information for the Asia Pacific episode. That's it. And it's the same if you're in the Americas or Europe, you'll just see that information. We do occasionally change the information over here on the left-hand side as well, based on persona information, and sometimes about industry as well. So there are a whole range of parameters, but they're the two common ones that we would play with. That's why working with Eloqua Forms on Eloqua landing pages is so much nicer, because you've got that ability to present dynamic content, utilize field merges, etc. Now, I'm going to jump past that because we just talked about that one. And I want to very quickly, and I apologize, we are running over time. I knew this would happen. Okay, so the Eloqua AI advantage. This is this new segment I want to drop in, and we're going to talk about these. And this will hopefully be like a 3 to 4 minute exercise. So fatigue analysis. First one, this is just proving to be a real game changer in the way that we're designing some campaigns. First thing is get to the dashboard. The dashboard is simply called fatigue analysis. It should be available to everybody if you've got the Eloqua AI turned on. If you haven't, contact us. We will help you go through that process. But this is what it looks like. And so the fatigue analysis basically looks at your entire database and breaks it down, people down into 5 categories: undersaturated, saturated, oversaturated, just right. I'm liking to call that one the Goldilocks zone, or inactive. Okay. And there's a whole range, there's definitions here on the screen to tell you what they mean. But because the fatigue value is a contact field sitting on the Eloqua contact, you can then use it to adjust people's flow on a campaign canvas. I would also encourage you to take that fatigue level and make sure you add it to your contact views. So when you're looking at lists of contacts in Eloqua, have the fatigue value there, or the fatigue level displayed, so that you see it and you start to get some indication as to what's going on. Including and excluding can be really helpful using the fatigue analysis, and also altering the journey. And that's one thing that we're doing. We're using it a little bit to, if we send out second reminders to people, or second invitations, I should say, if they've opened the first one but not registered, then we're looking at, are they oversaturated? If they are oversaturated, we might just call it quits. At that point, we're not going to go again. They're oversaturated. They're maybe getting too much. So let's just pull back a little bit on some of the communication. So it's giving us more control over what we're doing. So I would encourage you to have a look. I won't jump in now. I'll just leave you with that visual, but you hopefully have that turned on. If you don't have it turned on, as I said, it's just a service request to Eloqua. It's free. There's no downside. So go ahead and get that turned on as quickly as possible.